So it is Memorial Day weekend and it is beautiful outside. I finally have my greenhouses open. And this is my pumpkin patch. If you look, you can see all this tall grassy stuff here. This is my cover crop. It's called winter rye. I particularly like this cover crop because I can plant it in October and it still germinates. It does really well in cold weather. And I'm way behind on trimming it, chopping it. I actually use a weed whacker through my whole patch to chop it. There's two ways you can go about with the cover crop. The way I prefer is I keep mowing it or chopping it, and then as the pumpkin grows, I then till all that stuff into the soil. It helps increase organic matter. The roots, and they pull up nitrogen in the fall and during the spring to prevent it from leaching. So it does provide organic matter and nutrients to the soil. Another way you can go about it is you can let this continue growing, and it'll get to be taller than me. But then it gets really woody, and what you do is you chop it down at the base, and then it's more like a mulch. I don't like that way as much, so I'm gonna be chopping this whole patch today with my weed whacker, and we'll see how it goes. Oh, nothing is ever easy. It took me about 5 minutes just to get this head off of the weed whacker. The last time I used it was last year to make leaf mulch, so they're all bits and pieces of leaf dust everywhere, just binding everything up. And now I'm trying to get this string out because I'm replacing it with this, which is the stinky little plastic thing. I used to have metal ones, but they don't have attachments for that anymore. But anyway, I'm working on getting this stupid thing out, and then I'll get back to weed whacking. Robbie wants to remind everyone, don't forget your eye protection. I'm about 3/4 done, and I am taking a break. Weed whacking is done. I have lots of cleanup to do inside the greenhouses, but I'm going to save that for another day. I'm going to give my plants a little watering with some nutrients, and then another day I'll go over pumpkin anatomy. So I wanted to go over some terminology and anatomy real quick. This is goose. So to start, these two guys down here, this and this, these are called the cotyledons. These were the first embryonic leaves that came out of the seed. They're not really considered true leaves, but they did give the plant what it needed to get going when the seed sprouted. Since there's two cotyledons, this plant is referred to as a dicot. A dicot. You may have learned that in biology class. Di means two, and cot means cotyledon. So from there, this guy right here is the first true leaf. This is the first leaf that popped up when the plant sprouted. This leaf is important because it tells me what way the vine was going to go when I transplanted it. So the vine always goes in the opposite direction of the first true leaf. So the first true leaf was on this side. That means the vine went this way. So this guy right here, this is the main vine. I am training this to go straight down my patch, and it's going to go 30 feet until it hits the end of the patch. I will have the pumpkin set on the main vine, ideally. So then from there, if you look at every single leaf, at the base of every leaf, there's stuff. There, and I'm gonna go over all of that. So let's go to this one, I guess. So at the base of every leaf, you're gonna have a flower. Usually it's a male flower. I'll go over male and female flowers during pollination time. So we got a flower. This here is called the secondary vine. So the secondary vine I'm going to train to go about perpendicular to the main vine. This one's going to go 15 feet that way. Over here we have a secondary vine that's going to go 15 feet that way, and so forth. So my pumpkin is going to be about 30 feet by 30 feet. So you multiply that together and you get 900 square feet. So it is a big plant. The other thing we have is a tendril, which I cut off, but you can see one up here. Oh, look, it's a baby. That's a baby pumpkin. Anyway, this is a tendril. I'll be cutting this off. This beautiful little thing is a female flower, and you can see the little pumpkin at the base. Look how cute it is. Unfortunately, that's not going to be the one. he is too close. He's not far out enough on the main vine. We want it to be, I don't know, 15 feet plus out on the main vine. Everything that supplies the pumpkin pretty much comes from before the pumpkin, not after the pumpkin, because the pumpkin takes all the energy from anything after it. So the further we have the pumpkin that way, the more plant we have feeding it this way. So this one's a little too early. I don't have the heart to pick it off right now, but he's really cute. I think we talked about tendrils. Some people keep these. I choose to get rid of them. I think they just get in the way and cause issues. In other plants it can be helpful because it grabs onto things and helps stabilize the plant, but I don't really have much for it to grab onto other than itself, and then it just strangles itself. Okay, so this here is a secondary vine from Snoop Gourd. So the main vine is going this way, and then this here is a secondary vine. The secondary vine is just like the main vine. It's got a leaf, and then it's got the male flower, and this has a little vine coming off of it too. You can barely see it right there, but that is another vine that will come off, and that's called a tertiary vine. We don't want tertiary vines. They take too much energy from the plant and they don't really contribute much to the pumpkin. So really they just suck energy from the plant. So every single tertiary vine, I'm gonna pinch off. This is almost too small, I can't do it. But yeah, we get rid of tertiary vines. We don't want them. Later, after the pumpkin's pollinated, I'm gonna pick all the male flowers, but I need them now because I need them to pollinate the pumpkin. But after pollination, they're just gonna take energy too. So a lot of this pumpkin growing is about conserving energy and only keeping what you need to grow that pumpkin. One other thing I forgot to mention, also at the base of every single leaf, you'll see that little white dot there. That is what's called an adventitious root. And you can see there's actually a root growing down in the ground there. That's because there was a white dot on the bottom of the vine too. So the vine on the bottom, or the white dot on the bottom, grew this root, but the question is, how can we turn that into a root and give the pumpkin even more stuff to suck up? Well, what we do is we do something called burying the vine, and that basically means we cover this vine with dirt, and then once that adventitious root is covered with dirt, it'll be like, oh, I can root in this, and then it'll form a root that comes up and then goes down into the soil. I'll talk about that in more detail when I talk about vine burying, which is by far the worst part of growing giant pumpkins. I've got quite a mess in my greenhouse here. The main vine is almost to the end of my weeded area, so I'm gonna have to weed all this stuff. I didn't chop this winter rye because it's getting pretty big and woody, and I didn't want like the splinters and shards to destroy these leaves. So I'm gonna clean this up. I'm gonna get rid of that cage. I'm gonna take off the heat lamp and all the lights and the thermometer and put them all away for the season. I just wanted to show you something. This here is what happens when your plant isn't properly hardened off to the wind. I'm not surprised this happened because it's been closed up for so long, but the wind did snap this leaf a little bit. It'll be fine, but just a little minor setback. Okay, so I got the winter rye and the weeds pulled out a little bit. Gives the plant some more room to grow. Probably in less than a week that main vine will be towards that end. You might think that I got my cages all taken care of, and I didn't. They are right here. I don't have time for them today. They are not on the top of my priority list. I have a million things to do still. I'm always behind. So what I'm gonna do next is I'm gonna water and feed the plants. I'm really happy with how they're looking, but it's time to push them. They need to start kicking into gear, and I think that's gonna happen just because it's finally warm. The nights are warmer, so I think it's gonna take off regardless, but I'm gonna start pushing it, feeding it some more nitrogen to really encourage that plant growth, and I'll talk more about that next time. What else do I have to do? I have an actual garden of food that I have to plant. I'm behind on that. I have a long gourd I want to plant, and I'm excited to tell you about that. I have a squash vine borer trap that's going to be a first for me this year that I'm going to set up. So I have a lot to do still, and I'm going to work on that over the next week, and I'll take videos as I do that. But until then, goodbye.